All right, welcome all you Bend Film Festival viewers. Welcome to the panel with cinematographers John J. Connor and son John T. Connor. My name is Bradley Lanphier. I am a filmmaker located here in Bend, Oregon, and I am very honored and pleasured to have this conversation with you guys today. So welcome.
Thank you. Welcome.
So, Thank you. Can you guys just both take a moment here? We'll pick an order here. We'll go father and son. So if you guys just want to introduce yourselves a little bit and what you've done and what you're here to share today.
John Connor. I haven't done much, but I should be doing more tomorrow.
Yeah.
God, I don't know. Started my first movie in 1972. And that was Deliverance.
So John T., what was your first movie?
Well, it was Deliverance as well. I was about 60. I was walking around and on the set, and there was some guy walking around at the lunch table with an arrow through his chest. And yeah, that was my introduction to the movie industry.
So for the people watching who don't necessarily know who you guys are, it's highly likely that everybody watching has probably seen your work, even though we don't necessarily know the faces of the people making the work. So John Sr. here, he has been a cinematographer and camera operator on movies like Top Gun, Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, Rocky IV, et cetera, et cetera. John T., you worked on movies like The Revenant, Star Trek, Man on Fire, the list goes on. So we are obviously very humbled to be hearing some of these thoughts about you guys. So what we'd like to hear a little bit, to start with, we're talking about the perspective of a cinematographer or a DP, director of photography. Could you guys comment for those watching who don't know the difference between a director and a cinematographer? What is that difference and how do they work together on a film set?
Well, the director, of course, is in charge of the set and has the choice and design of the whole movie. The cinematographer works hand in hand with him because there might be certain things that the director would like to do, and there are certain things that the cinematographer would like to introduce visually into the piece. So they go hand in hand, like they never leave each other's side. So that's basically what it's about. And it takes a while. Now, John is doing more digital stuff than I ever did. I worked basically when I was an operator with film, so that we had to do the shots and then send the film away to the lab and wait for the next day and hope everything was okay. As of late, though, for the last 10 years, I've been doing more digital work because that's the way we do it now. And that's probably a good thing because you can see it immediately and you don't have to wait 24 hours to see the results. So that's also very good. And it's also very good for the director because it gives him confidence that the shot is going to be great, like he can see. Whereas on film, the director would ask me, so is this going to look okay? And I'd say, oh yeah, wait till tomorrow. And he said, oh God, I got to wait till tomorrow. And but you hoped that when it came back, it looked good because otherwise you were in big trouble.
You were fired.
Yes. I didn't want to say that, but it is. Yeah.
That's pretty much how the business went then.
Yeah.
So what are the on-set responsibilities of a director of photography?
First of all, help design the shots and decide in the visual elements that you want to involve in the project. Now you might have, it might be suspense, So your lighting will be a lot of silhouettes and much reduced. And or if it's a musical, it's going to be very full and round. So that's basically it. And you have to be on the same page as the director because you are giving him an imagination, a dream of the visuals that he's thinking of. So you have to be on the same track. And that's the most important. The other important person that you mix with is the production designer, because he designs the sets and all the colors of the sets and things like that. So visually, that contributes to the look. Now, you can ask John the same question, and hopefully he'll have the same answers, or I'm in trouble.
Yeah. Yeah, I know the roles haven't really changed over the years. But yeah, I mean, I was just talking to the director of this project. We started yesterday on this new project and literally looking up visuals and examples from other things that other people have shot over the years. And we try to find kind of a look for this project, look and feel. And yeah, it's a collaboration that can go good or bad, along the way. But you usually try to steer it obviously in a good way.
Are you allowed to talk about the project that you're on right now?
Yeah, I'm on the season 4 of Jack Ryan in Budapest.
Yeah, and that's on Amazon. Is that right?
That is an Amazon project, yeah. And before this, I was on a Netflix project called Monster, which is a Ryan Murphy production about Jeffrey Dahmer, a serial killer from the 70s and 80s. So yeah, everything was kind of put together, but the cinematographer, again, like my dad said, pretty much goes hand in hand with the director, and you try to work together to get a visual. Some directors are more visual than others. Some are less. And so your job really, you kind of have to find your legs a little bit with each project. Some directors are very hands-on, like Tony Scott, who we both worked with. And I should point out that, my dad did work on the first Top Gun. I was in high school. That was my last year in high school. And then 33 years later, I was the operator on Top Gun 2. So it's quite a coincidence, but also we worked with a lot of the same people. So it was kind of a cool situation. And Tom Cruise thought it was pretty cool too. Dad came to the set, and there's 2 generations of camera operators at that point. Now I'm a full cinematographer. That was pretty much the last kind of thing I operated on. And that was 3 years ago right now, waiting for it to come out.
So obviously, since it hasn't come out yet, a lot of it is still under wraps. Is there anything that you can tell us about your experience in Top Gun 2?
It's a little more intense. Tom Cruise is now, a big part of it, where he was, he was just an actor back then. He's a producer, and he really has a lot of, well, let's just say a lot of money involved in it, as far as producing it and the look of it and the feel. But yeah, it's going to be great. It parallels it in a lot of ways. So I think if anyone liked the first one, they'll definitely like the second one. They're really smart about it, the way it's written. And yeah, I think they'll cater to everybody with it. It's going to be really big. And that's why I think they're waiting to release it, because they want it really big. So.
Yeah. Is there any, anecdotal moments or memories that you have from actually being on set that you could share?
Being on the aircraft carrier is something pretty amazing. It was a once in a lifetime situation. And when my dad was on the aircraft carrier, he couldn't take me, obviously, because it's a little tricky and a little dangerous. But yeah, that was definitely a highlight. And seeing how that goes on and what goes on in that city in the sea, it was just amazing. And years prior, I know Tony Scott wanted to aim the aircraft carrier a certain direction for backlight, most likely. And my dad could tell this story really well, and that's where I know the story originally. And the Navy was like, we can't just turn the ship, that costs thousands and thousands of dollars. And Tony Scott was like, how much? And I think they said, do you remember, Dad, was it 10,000?
I think it was 25,000.
So yeah, he said, well, here's a check, and they turned the ship. And then on this one, I got to shoot DP a bunch of, sort of what we call second unit, which is not obviously the main unit. We just do like flying shots without the actors and such. And I was like, oh man, well, this is kind of funny, but I kind of want to turn the ship. So I talked to the guy on the deck, and he calls up to the tower, and he's like, guys, the DP wants to turn the ship for better light. The pilots will be taking off into the sun with a crosswind, which is not what they usually do. He says, but it's for the movie, so make it good. And they did it. And I didn't have to pay $25,000, which would have been about $200,000, 33 years later. So yeah, that was my highlight of that for sure.
Wow. Good story. Well, John's done a lot of movies with Tony Scott. I mean, I didn't introduce him personally to Tony, but John and I had a camera assistant that was a mutual friend, and he was working on a Tony Scott movie, and I was leaving the series I was doing, and I wanted John to leave with me, but I couldn't tell him. So he thought I had fired him. But what I did is I worked out a deal. I traded the movie that John was going on. I took that assistant and moved him up to operator to give him a little encouragement. So then I changed those two guys, and that's when John met Tony Scott. What movie was that again, John? That was
Last Boy. Last Boy.
Boy Scout.
Yeah, 1991.
Yeah. So John was with him for 22 years.
Yeah.
And Tony was extremely a visual guy.
Extremely.
Very
really
visual.
Cinematographer. In fact, he was kind of a cinematographer. In fact, on a couple of movies, he hired gaffers as the DPs just because he wanted to have a stronger, say in the cinematography.
So, John Sr., can you tell us who were some of your mentors when you were coming up as a young cinematographer?
The most important one was Vilmos Zsigmond, who won the Academy Award for, let's see now, that's a long time ago.
Yeah.
Close Encounters. He won the Academy Award for Close Encounters. He was nominated for The River, and it was also nominated for Winter Kills. And after that, he introduced me to Conrad Hall, who got the Academy Award for Butch Cassidy. And Conrad introduced me to Haskell Wexler, who got the Academy Award for Virginia Woolf. And Haskell and Conrad Hall had a commercial company, and it was called Wexler Hall. And Vilmos had a commercial company, and it was called Director something. Anyway, so I went between those three DPs all the time when I was an assistant and operator. So they kept me very busy. And then I met Donnie Peterman, who DP'd Flashdance. And so I worked with the best guys. And, it's funny, you watch and observe all their work, and you'll be doing a movie, and all of a sudden you'll flash back on something that they did and the way they lit it, and you just light it that way, and it looks great. And you don't realize how much your brain is open to experience all of this and envelop it all into your brain. But you remember this stuff, bang, 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 like that. So those were the guys that, and Alan Davio. I worked with Alan Davio in Chicago on a commercial. And then I worked with him on ET. So just, I couldn't have asked for a better group of fathers to guide me through the business.
More of
And
a
they're
group.
all- Go ahead, John.
It was more of a group of mentors rather than just kind of one.
Yeah. And they all
So-
knew each other. I mean, I can remember going over to Vilmos's house, and sitting there at the dinner table was Laszlo Kovacs, Haskell Wexler, and Vilmos. And you just go, and I was only in Hollywood for about a month. And I went, oh my God, look at these guys who surround me. Oh. And it's just, it's an amazing experience.
Yeah.
So,
John T, hypothetically speaking, if it wasn't for your father being who he is, do you think you would still be doing what you are today?
Funny thing, I can't imagine what else I would be doing. Maybe a race car driver is about the only other thing I was really interested in. But having growing up in the business, I was just surrounded by it and knew it. I was just so fluent on the set, which I think is really important now. Obviously today, a lot of people will get in as a cinematographer and they don't work up the ladder. Whereas I guess my father and I are, you could say, old school, but we do appreciate the actual, so-called starting in the mailroom theory of working up the ladder. You really gain a ton of experience in each, starting as a loader. You're loading every inch of film, which is what I did. Loaded film for 3 or 4 years before I was even on the set. I was on the set, but obviously out on the production. And then second assistant, assisting the first, and then moving up to focus puller, which was another thing my dad did for me. I kind of used my dad, in each beginning of each position. And then I moved up to a focus puller. And then my dad, that was on Young Riders TV series, which was a really tough place to learn. A TV show is a much more grueling schedule. You shoot 10 to 15 pages of the script a day. Whereas on a feature, you can shoot as little of an eighth of a page a day, usually about 2 pages a day. And, I moved up on the TV show and I was really happy pulling focus. And then my dad was like, I had the opportunity to go on Die Hard 2 as a loader / second assistant. And I was like, wow, I don't want to go backwards. And my dad actually pushed me off the show. And I actually went back down to second, which was probably one of the best things that I did in my career, was to go back and involve myself with, and that was actually my dad's assistant from Top Gun, Kenny Nishino. He was one of the top focus pullers in the business at the time. So I kind of went back with him, and then the rest was history. I took off. I did big, huge jobs as a second, and that's when I met Tony Scott, and then eventually, many years later, he moved up to a first in a much better situation, even though it was a great situation to be with my dad. But at that point, I was always trying to get his name off my resume. It didn't help too much to go, oh, you got this job because you're good, right? Your father's son. I got a lot of nepotism, situations happened, and I kind of wanted to be on my own. And then later in my career, all I wanted to do was work with them again, but we were off on different projects and the timing didn't work out too. I did get to jump in with him a bunch of times as a camera operator and such. But obviously DPs don't work together. So once we were both DPs, unless there's a big second unit on a show, and which never really happened, we kind of, didn't cross paths again. It was interesting, but I can't imagine what else I would have done. I just grew up and knew everything about the business. So I was really comfortable on set, which is really important for, your overall personality on set.
yeah. And John has a great demeanor on the set. Everybody likes him because he's so low key and intense with his work. And that's a nice environment that you present to the rest of the crew.
Yeah, I learned early, that personality is probably almost half the job.
Yeah.
Because it's not who it's who knows you in the business. And I tell kids getting started today, That's the biggest thing is, is your reputation, your how people see you.
John T, you mentioned earlier that you're doing a lot of second unit stuff on Top Gun 2, right?
I did a little bit of shooting because I was the camera operator, the A camera operator on the movie, but I got opportunities to, I actually started as the B camera operator on the show, and then they fired the A camera first. So I moved up from B camera to A camera. So when I was on B camera, I was actually shooting more, which is where I wanted to be. I actually wanted to do the second camera because it offers you the go away and go grab this shot or go do this plane taking off and such like that. So
I've heard a lot of cinematographers comment that they actually prefer doing second unit stuff because there's more fun stuff there. Like, can you comment on that? Do you agree? Do you prefer first unit, second unit?
Well, prefer first unit because you're completely in control of the creative. You actually tell the second unit what to do. You work right with the director. Everything has to do with you. But yeah, like my dad did Maverick, which was, a Western. And we got to do the whole runaway stagecoach sequence. I mean, it was an incredible, and we worked just as many days as the main unit. Some second units can just be a few days, but some concurrently go with the bigger movies, go with the whole time. And that was just amazing every day, bringing all the toys to the desert, chasing stagecoaches and horses around. Not an easy job, but certainly really rewarding and fun. And the dailies were, you go and you'd watch the film the next day of what you did. And it was just a great experience. We were the heroes a lot. And the first unit's kind of like, oh, wow, you guys are doing, like you said, the fun stuff.
Right.
But yeah, like on Demolition Man, my dad did the second unit on that. And I was the first assistant camera on that. And that was, big, huge stunts, guys jumping out of helicopters, descending on a rig 50 feet and landing 6 feet from a rooftop. And, yeah, you just do some really cool stuff on the second unit.
Yeah. Could I get some comments from both of you here? How does the craft of cinematography affect storytelling in a film?
Well, I think it's a very important role. I mean, basically, the story has to be there. That's primary. But secondarily, you can add a whole feeling, a visual feeling of what the film is. If it's a mystery, you can add to it. If it's a horror film, all of those things really matter. And you can put in all your tricks, things that you've learned before, things that you love, and things that the director will love. And that's the nice part about cinematography. You have the ability to create all the time, 8 hours a day. So that to me was the most challenging, but the most rewarding, because once you knock out a scene, and the director leans over to you and said, "That really looks nice." You go, "Well, another feather, that's good." And you get a fulfillment. So that's why it was good for me, for my psyche and my mental stability. It was great.
Yeah, well said. I mean, I can't really add to that. That's pretty much it.
How do you think again, the craft of cinematography and storytelling, how does it change across genres of films? Documentaries versus narratives, features or TV shows, etc. Does it change depending on the type of film that you're working on?
Yeah, absolutely. My dad was one of the first people to bring a feature quality to TV on the show China Beach, which was, a war show back in the 80s. And it was the first time that like TV really went for feature quality look, and they got him to do it. He came from a feature world and then brought that look to a TV show. They gave him a couple more days, I believe, to do an episode than normally, because obviously the more cinematic, the more days it takes to be more cinematic. So
Yeah.
He really nailed that and was really famous for that and started a whole trend. And now, TV is just as visual as features. And now you could actually go the other direction. Like you could go from TV to features, where it was really hard to do back in the day. But now people that do things like Ozark and some of these really cool shows are getting to be really visual. But yeah, documentaries, obviously, there's a look and a style, and it's very obviously candid, and you just kind of grab things and you kind of find things on the day. There's a little less prep involved with that. But prep is a big thing, and planning what you're doing, like I was saying with the director, and forming a look for the show. You usually have a pretty good idea of the look of the show. But yeah, it's different, but it's kind of a little more the same these days. It's really interesting, and you bring what you want to the project. And things like La La Land, which neither of us obviously worked on, but that gives a cinematographer the freedom to do whatever, yellow lights and green colors, and it's really, the sky's the limit on a project like that. Whereas if you do a Western, obviously it has to follow a certain, thing, unless you're doing some kind of comedy Western, then you can kind of play with it. But there's kind of unwritten rules, but there are rules, so to speak. But there's no real right or wrong way. But then again, a lot of people do well, and some people, don't do well, get fired, on certain projects. It's a collaboration that you do have to meet and mesh. It's an interesting world now, and you're usually picked for your cinematography by what you've done. It was a grueling, process to get on this project I'm on now, and they wanted to see all my work, and and I had to put my best work forward, and so it's quite different between all the different genres of storytelling. But again, the story is really the key. If you don't have a story, it doesn't matter what you bring as a cinematographer. And I've done a lot of smaller projects, and I've learned on every one of them. But I found that ultimately, if there's no story, they don't even notice the cinematography, and that usually works hand in hand. The cinematographer usually wins on a movie and an Academy Award of something that also won Best Picture. It's usually, unless it's a real visual movie that just really stands out, they pretty much go hand in hand.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry. When I was hired to do China Beach, they had shot the pilot. And when I interviewed for it, I interviewed with John Sacred Young, who was the producer and the writer, and a couple other producers were there. And he said, I just don't like the look of the pilot. And I said, what don't you like? And he said, well, it didn't have any direction. The light never came from one source. And I said, well, I'm an art fan. And one of the artists that I love is Vermeer, which is very sourcey, single source light. And I said, I would like to shoot China Beach in his style of painting. And that's when I started it. And I was on the show for 3 years, which is a nice run, because back then it was 22 episodes per season. So we had a lot of stuff. And then John was there with me. So that made the cake.
That was a good learning experience too. That was incredible. Yeah.
How do you think the relationship between storytelling and the hardware of cinematography, how does that work together? Does camera and lens choices, does that affect the way storytelling goes, or does the storytelling affect your choice of cameras and lenses? And how does that relationship work together?
I'll let John answer that, but I think they do coincide with each other. And it's, once again, the story. When you read the story, you're also envisioning how you want it to look. And whether you use wide lenses or cameras low or cameras high, all of that helps the story visually. So it's very important to pick the right corridor you want to walk down with the camera.
Yeah. Yeah, very much so. There's like Dad said, between wide lenses, Tony Scott was a very long lens type of director. So you really had to plan, seeing, everything in the shot, kind of telephoto and, but he loves his backgrounds. He would shoot one direction for one part of the scene and sometimes go to a completely different location for the reverse and look the other direction just because he liked the look. So he would actually, let the environment dictate where he shot. But he was a very stylistic and very visual director. And then, there's movies like Raising Arizona, that have a certain wide style and, obviously comedy, you want to play wider and then more of a, a 1:7:8 ratio like we're looking at on our screens, because you want to see the comedy, you want to see the body language and, on something that's a little more intense, you would do like a 2:4:0 or anamorphic frame, which is, sees much more side to side than it does up and down. So you're much more in the face. But yeah, there's so many different ideas you come to with lensing. Now there's so many different lenses to use. There was not a lot of choices. Then film stocks was a big thing. I'm sure my dad could tell you, like he would use one film stock for a certain project that was a little more, contrasty, and then maybe on another movie, like Road to Perdition or something type of thing, you want something more soft, and then you do softer lighting and more beautiful lighting. And then, if you want to do something really intense, you do really hard, sharp lighting. But yeah, it's all kind of a recipe for the look. And again, there's no real rules, and some people bend those rules, and that's really when people get attention, is when they kind of go for it, so to speak. But again, you can get bit just as well, going for it too much and going too dark, or going too bright, and a lot of that's controllable obviously in post, now a lot more than it was before. So you can do so much in post. You can change the complete look, you can change the colors, you can, everything's metadata. There's so much you can do now with the possibilities of, LUTs and, changing your everything in post. So obviously you have to have a good base of what you did, a good negative, as they used to say. But yeah, there's the possibilities are endless when it comes to look and feel for a project.
So when you were making that industry transition, where things were moving more from film into digital, how did your workflow change with that, in terms of crafting the look before you were shooting or while you're shooting, and judging your exposures and color? How did that change going from film to digital?
Well, Dad made that transition when I started shooting. It was already pretty much digital, and I've tried to shoot film, but no one will anymore. They don't want to wait. They don't want to. It's actually more expensive. So Dad actually could tell you really about that. He was there for the full transition and from film, but you had to know a lot more with film. You really had to know what you were doing. You couldn't just jump in. You didn't. I mean, it was a much tougher situation.
Yeah, the thing that I'm not sure whether I really welcomed digital or that I just accepted it, but you didn't have a choice because the industry was changing the system. And one of the things that was good about it is you got to have the director sitting there and you could make a visual change and he could see it on a monitor. Now, the other bad part of that is you have about 15 people standing around the monitor, and the person that's doing hair said, do you really like the shot that way? And you go, you can see people out of here. So it takes the privacy away, because the nice thing about film is you had to go to the screening room, and it was a select few people that went there, and you sat in the dark and watched what was realistically a movie. And that's the part that I missed. But the other part of it was that you could literally sit down with a colorist and you could make changes right there on the set. And if you didn't like it, you wanted to add a little green, you would add a little green, a little blue. And those were things that you could do immediately. So it opened our door of creativity, I think, even further for the director of photography and anyone that was aligned with project, like the production designer visually was aligned with a project. They were able to see more of the final result, and they didn't have to wait, and they didn't have to imagine what it was going to look like. So I think in that respect, it was a good thing that we went to digital. And you just had to change the lighting, you had to change the makeup, because all of that stuff, the one thing that the digital did is there was more contrast, it was crisper, it was much more in focus, where film, you had like, not a gauze, but there was a texture to it. And that texture is gone now, but you can recreate that texture in lighting and in filters. So it's not completely out of your reach. So on the whole, I would say that I like the digital part of the world because everybody can see the shot. Where when I operated in the beginning, we didn't have video playback. And the operator was the only one that saw the scene through the camera. Nobody else could see it. So I thought, God, I got my hands down on this one. And the director would turn to the operator and say, how was it? And you'd say, great, or it was terrible. So the operator back then had a more involved role in making the movie. So, but those are the changes. And I think they're to the good, to the plus side.
Do you have an artistic preference between film or digital?
I like the texture of film, where, digitally, if you look at something, it's like looking at an NFL football game compared to a texture in a movie theater. But you can filter that stuff and you can light it and things like that. No, we're in this age now where I think that gives us more speed. We can do things faster than we could do before. And with the digital, you can really light low. I mean, I used to light at a 1.4 and John was pulling focus and I'd say, okay, 1.4. And he'd go, Dad, can't you give me a 2.8 or more stop so I have more focus depth? And I said, no, 1.4, John, you got it.
I learned the hard way, that's for sure.
Yeah.
What's good and what made me really excel as a focus puller. But yeah, same thing for a focus puller. They didn't have a monitor. They had to guess how far away the actor was. They didn't know until the next day, and it was really hard to watch daily. Sometimes you would lose your, luckily I was really good at pulling focus, but so I didn't have too many bad days. But there was a day where the entire day was out of focus and we had to reshoot everything. Where now you don't have that pressure. At the end of the day when you go home, how you did. And you really didn't know back then. And sometimes it wasn't 24 hours. Sometimes it was a weekend. When you shoot on Friday, you had to go out all weekend and just go, oh, I don't know if I have that big lean in with the big actor. You could cost thousands and millions of dollars to have a show have to come back and do something again. And that did happen. But we also had, you could flash the film. I guess you could corrupt the media today. That would be the kind of common situation. But you were really responsible for a lot back in the day, whereas now you know exactly how you did when you go home. But as far as a look either way, now digital wasn't as good when it first came out. It was a 3/4 chip, right? I mean, the early Sony cameras, and now Arri makes, obviously all these companies have come out. And it looks a lot more like film. You can watch a show now, and a lot of times they would use digital and film in the movie. Like when it first started, you would still use film during the day and then digital at night, because the digital could actually see more. And I remember my dad telling me early on, he ended up, going digital and taking away light. It was more of like light it and then take away as much as you can. Whereas film, you really had to cover your butt in a sense, and light it good enough. And, there's a lot of thoughts though on that. Do you want to light this really low on the day and put yourself into a situation where this is it, you can't get it any brighter? Or do you light it bright and then in post darken it to where you want it, so you have more control? But then the cinematographer wants that control, so they want to light it like it's going to look in the end process. So there's a big debate even today of how to light things for the end product, or to lock yourself in. If it's too dark, you can never bring it out. If there's not a thick negative, you're in big trouble. So it's a real weird political thing that happens too, the way you light. If you don't see an actor's eyes, and I've seen it, I've seen producers come to the cinematographer and say, I can't see Ethan Hawke's eyes, and then the cinematographer is, don't tell me what how to light. And the guy flipped out, and it was a really bad situation for the rest of the movie. So yeah, it's a big difference between digital and film. But I gotta say, I think there was a little bit of art loss on the transition to digital. I mean, almost anyone can do it on digital, whereas film, you really had to know what you were doing. So there's a little bit of that. And people like me that worked up the ladder and learned in film and had all those stresses of film. I have an open mind to everyone getting in the business now, but no one really has it as difficult. And I never thought I'd say that, but yeah, we walked uphill both ways in the snow with bare feet back in the day, and now it's kind of a cakewalk. But no, it's still just as difficult in many different ways now. But
since digital has made the workflow of creating the look of a film easier, are there aspects of that have done the reverse and actually made the job harder? Like, has technology in any way become an obstacle where people are getting distracted by the technology and it makes the story suffer or the efficiency suffer? Is there any area where the transition to digital has made things any harder compared to the film days?
I wouldn't say so. I would say, it's quite the opposite in almost every situation. But again, everyone gets to see it right there on set. So that's an advantage to everything. I'd say the only thing, again, is a little artistry loss, and the fact that everyone had to trust you for what it was going to look like the next day. You really didn't know. And again, there was no video taps on the cameras early on, so really no one was able to see anything. They just saw what we all see standing there. So I don't think it's ever made it more difficult. It's opened so many more doors, and the possibilities are endless in every sense.
Do you have a favorite film movie and a favorite digital movie that you've shot?
You did quite a bit between the two. I've almost all done digital, so I can't really compare.
I would say that, yeah, I would say the two outstanding films for me were E.T. and Flashdance. Those
So
had very
E.T. being film and Flashdance was digital?
no, Flashdance was also film.
Okay.
After that, though, digitally, I did some movies with Charlie Matthau, Walter Matthau's son, who was directing, and we did some of those digitally. And there was a lot. Those were helpful because Charlie could see everything as we were going to have it in the end. So that was very helpful. And it probably sped up the process of what we were trying to achieve, because all of his questions were answered immediately. So I would say, but I haven't done that many features digitally because By the time we became digital, I was doing more television stuff, and but it's what it is. It just works very well, and you have more tools at your fingertips digitally than you did film.
What was one of your favorite moments of your career so far for both of you? Favorite moment behind the camera?
I think my favorite was when I was an operator. I was an operator on Charlie's Angels, the original television series. And that's a scam call. So I'm getting rid of it. Anyway,
Either that
I was an operator on Charlie's Angels. And John came over to the set one day, and we had rehearsed a scene where Kate Jackson was coming around the corner and had to gasp at catching a robber. And so I was on the camera and I said, John, come on over and put your hand on the focus knob. And so when Katie comes around the corner, she'll see you doing the focus. Well, Kate came around the corner and she saw John, and she said with a few explicitives, what is he doing there? And she had to cut. She couldn't work. So that was one of my favorite moments. One of the other favorite moments.
Messing with the talent, huh?
Yeah. One of my other favorite moments is my first day as an operator. And we didn't have video tap, so nobody else could see. And in the video tap, you would see the shutter moving. So you would know the camera's running. And so we're doing a shot of Jacqueline running through the woods about 200 feet, dead heat, running through the woods. So I roll the camera. They say action. I cut the camera and I give my assistant the footage. And she said, you know what? The footage is the same as it was after the last take. You didn't roll. So I had to go to Jacqueline. I said, Jacqueline, I don't know how to tell you this, but I did not roll the camera. I was so nervous on my first shot as an operator. So we had to do it again. But those kind of stand out in my mind. And I think another one was in Deliverance, when Bert was coming up in the canoe and he had to fire an arrow to kill the guy that had John Voight as a captive. And we were in a boat and in a canoe, and Bert came up and he had to reach for a branch. And when he reached for the branch, he grabbed a water moccasin and he threw it over my head. And I guess that was another moment in life. But that's basically it. Yeah, there's always stuff that stands out. And I think John probably has more of those memories than I do.
There's quite a few, I mean, both of us have almost not come home, we've both been involved in some pretty hairy things as well. It's not all glamorous, so to speak, and some pretty difficult things. But yeah, there's obviously some great moments that happen, but there's so many moments, obviously getting the shot really well, and especially if it's, a big stunt or something to that effect is definitely a highlight, especially as a camera operator, because you have everything to do with what the shot is and getting it, so to speak. But yeah, I've had quite a few great focus pull situations on Fight Club. When Brad Pitt leans down really close and he's got this guy in the bathroom floor and he's about to maybe kill him or something to that effect, and Brad leans way in really close, and and I got the focus on that one, which was, it's one of pretty difficult shot to do. And David Fincher, the director, said, "Oh, textbook focus." And he doesn't pay very many compliments, but when you get a compliment from the director, it's always, as any crew member, it's pretty satisfying, and it really makes you feel good about it. But yeah, we've both had some pretty dangerous situations. We've both worked on a lot of action adventure movies, and they're always pushing the envelope. And my dad was on a insert car, which is a car that has the camera platform on it, and he was towing a dragster, and the thing's supposed to catch fire. And because of the way the wind goes in the back of a car, if you've ever had your window open in the back on some sort of vehicle, that the exhaust comes in and everything. Well, the fire blew up, and then it all came right back and kind of singed all the hair off the operators, the two cameras, and they called my dad Fireball Connor for a while, but had a little humor to it. But it was a very gnarly situation that could have gone much worse. But yeah, there's definitely some highlights. I was on Transformers 2, and there was a car that's supposed to blow up and go flying through the air. Well, it almost landed on us, and I have a good video of that. I had my camera going at the time because I thought this was kind of a dangerous thing. And
I think I've seen that on your Instagram.
Yeah,
the car flying over the barrier.
Yeah,
lands right in front of you.
Yeah, it would have landed on us if the driver hadn't hit the brakes. And yeah, I mean, we've both been involved in some pretty cool stuff, but also that's, danger is definitely there in everything we do. So we, as operators and cinematographers, try to keep a safe set as well. So there's many more pieces that you use, parts to the job that you can't exactly learn in any school or such. But accidents happen, and you always have to kind of gauge what's going on and kind of fend for yourself a little bit and say, oh, this isn't safe, or so there's a lot of that goes on in the industry, and a lot of people don't know about. But yeah, a lot of highlights of cool things over the years, for sure.
I think, if I may interject, I think one of the things about being a director of photography is having your crew be excellent, like being able to have confidence that they can get it in the first shot if they had to. The assistant is so important. The operator is so important, because the composition is always an important part of the movie. And you have to have an operator that can compose wonderful shots, and that if shot isn't working with the composition, he can make the changes, and you're not going to be upset at the changes he makes. So I think those are also important factors as a cinematographer that you have to keep in mind when you're hiring your crew. And because lots of times you'll go on to a movie and you haven't worked with any of these people. So you have to kind of hang it out and hope that they can perform. And then when they do, you say, both made the right choice. So that's very important, because they are your guiding light. They are your saviors. So that's really important for everyone that's interested in being a cinematographer, that they keep that foremost in their mind.
We are just about.
Alan Parker said it really best, is, an actor can be good on take 2 or take 13, but a crew has to be good on every take. It's it's sometimes a pressure that's put on us, but you truly do have to perform every time. And someone like David Fincher will do 20, 30 takes. Someone like Spielberg will do 1 take. You got to get it right. So that was a real challenge working with Spielberg on AI. And then both of us got to work with Spielberg a few times, which was kind of cool over the years too.
Wow.
Yeah.
So we're just about out of time here. For those watching who maybe are up and comers and first-time filmmakers or future filmmakers, do you have any advice, any words of wisdom to share?
Good luck. No, no, really, it goes back to what I said. It's not who you know, it's who knows you. It's a lot about, you know, how you carry yourself. Obviously, you know, research and doing your homework and, you know, having an opinion about everything is really important. So I obviously watching movies and watching everything is really the best, you know, way to, you know, to work through it. But obviously, I think you should work up the ladder, but a lot of people are very successful as jumping right in as a cinematographer. It's always nice to walk a mile in everyone's shoes, so you know what everyone's job is, and you can, you know, delegate and you know, have a positive crew, and you have to keep a morale up, you know, when it gets tough. And you know, we do work long hours, so that's a big part of it, is having, like my dad was saying, a great crew behind you is extremely huge. But yeah, I think you know, just shoot. You know, if you want to shoot, you just shoot everything you can. You just try to do everything, documentary, commercial, anything you can. You try to wrap yourself in. I think is really the best way to approach it. Yeah, wouldn't you say, Dad? I mean, it's kind of
Yeah, I agree, and I think, you know, when you hit on the importance to the crew, it's very important, because once you get into shooting and you're into it with the director, designing shots and things like that, it's nice to know that you have confidence in your crew, that you don't have to worry about them being able to excel. You know they're going to excel. And if the director wants to design a shot that's really difficult, you've got the crew that can actually make that happen. So
yeah.
that's very important. And it's sometimes a tough place to be. And sometimes you have to get rid of a crew member that isn't working out. And that's also a tough duty. But you have to do it to save the show and to keep it moving forward. So those are also other decisions that you have to make that sometimes you don't want to make.
Yeah, but as far as starting out, yeah, you really just have to surround yourself with every aspect of the business.
Yeah.
There are so many more things that I would love to keep asking you guys. You guys are just a wealth of stories and experience and knowledge, but I'm pretty sure that we need to keep this to 1 hour. So thank you so much. Thank you for sharing these stories, sharing your experience, and thank you for all of the incredible movies that you've made. We have all enjoyed watching them.
Yeah, thank you, John, for being here.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for inviting me. That's really cool. I love this.
And thank you, Bradley.
Yeah,
we all look forward to seeing the work that John T. that you're going to be continuing to make. John Senior, are you still working? Do you have anything coming up that you're going to be working on?
Well, I've got to cut the lawn today, and I've got to trim the hedges. I don't think I have to do dishes tonight. No, nothing yet coming up.
Yeah.
Well, we're all anxiously awaiting Top Gun 2 and Jack Ryan.
Yes. Oh,
I can't wait to see those.
Yeah. No, me too. Yeah, it's going to be good. Thank you, guys. Thanks for having us.
Thank you so much, guys.
Thank you. You're welcome. Bye.